Ladies and gentlemen, the numbers are in and it makes for some peculiar reading. 1 in 6 people living in England and Wales born outside the UK, Census reveals. Yes, there's more swarthy foreign men in England than you'd find in a Parisian whorehouse. It's a bit weird. Unlike the media say, it's not something we should be neutral about, and I'm going to tell you why in perfectly reasonable, logical, centrist terms. Let's begin. Now, the source itself is from The Guardian. Obviously, I didn't want to pick a right-wing source like the Daily Mail. I don't want to be accused of being biased. So I'm going to read you the numbers from The Guardian story, and then I'm going to tell you why I think all reasonable people should think this is going to hugely affect their quality of life. Stories from November 2nd. Non-UK born population increased to 10 million in 2021. Latest figures show a 33% rise in 10 years. Yes, so the Conservatives, those far right, can you believe that? Far right. The left called Boris Johnson and David Cameron far right. This is the people you're dealing with. The far right, woke, soy boy climate kids that never shut up whinging about green energy and being inclusive and flew more rainbow flags than the entire cast of Fame combined. Boris Johnson makes George Takei look homophobic. You couldn't make this shit up. But apparently they're all far right. And everybody knows the far right love importing 10 million random foreign strangers to their nation. Everybody knows that's far right. Haven't you been paying attention? Everything that isn't far left is far right. Keep up. 1 in 6 people living in England and Wales in 2021 were born outside the UK, according to the latest census figures. About 10 million people usually resident in England and Wales were born outside the UK on Census Day, March 21st, 2021, up from 7.5 million at the time of the last census in 2011. It's only 7.5 million people? It's fuck all. 7.5 million? Who cares? It's not like all 7.5 million of them have got arseholes and we need to process the sewage. It's not like all 7.5 million of them are capable of breeding. Well, okay, maybe a couple of them have drank themselves sterile, but most of them will. Most of them will be conker deep the first week they're here. And guess what that means? Even more little babies and even more people that need things like schools to educate them, roads to drive on, dentists to poke the teeth. The logistics behind handling 7.5 million human beings is ludicrous. And in the last 10 years, do you think we've been building hospitals and schools and roads and houses to keep all these people in? I am amazed the United Kingdom is not awash with human shite when we've just imported 7.5 million human arseholes. It beggars belief. Unless these people are all solar-powered, if we'd imported 7.5 million solar-powered androids without the need to excrete, then maybe I'd be less concerned. Breeding and excreting is of concern to me, especially when we haven't got enough bastard council houses now, and we didn't have enough in 2011. We didn't have... Think about that. We didn't have enough council housing and school places and hospital beds in 2011. So why did we import 7.5 million people? Oh yeah, and they're the ones we know about. So you can probably double it. Double it. They're the ones who told us that we're here. They're the honest ones. What about the dishonest ones? Okay, maybe doubling it is hyperbole, but there's going to be probably 1 million that are illegal. Surely in this day and age, when we've seen the dinghies coming on for the last few years. That number is probably low. We are being lowballed by the government. The lowest immigrant populations were in Wales and the northeast. Wonderful. Like I said, even the Afghans don't want to go to Middlesbrough. Even the Iraqis take one look out of the bus window and say, "Oh, take me back to Baghdad." India remained the most common country of birth outside the UK, but the biggest increase of people born outside the UK, outside of that, was Romania, with 6 times as many people living here in 2021 as there was in 2011. 6 times as many. In Middlesbrough, they have a Romanian Dole Day where everybody in the job centre only speaks Romanian. And by the way, they need 2 burly bouncers to run the door because, funny old thing, they're almost as ill-tempered as the locals. as you might expect, followed by Poland, Pakistan, Romania, Ireland, Italy, Bangladesh, Nigeria. So outside of Ireland and Italy, a lot of places with, I don't know, large numbers of poorly educated, generally poor, struggled since childhood, used to living life a bit rough around the edges, blokes from blokey places where they do blokey things. I don't want to get into an anti-immigration rant, but let me tell you why, on the face of it, without even exploring the data and seeing where they're from, this is a bad idea. I've already discussed logistics. When I was a bairn growing up in the borough, I knew everybody in my street. I still remember the names now. Jean and Arthur over the road, Heather and Frank up the street, Gloria and Harry next door. I knew them all. They knew me. All the kids in the street used to play together. Everybody had a common cause, a common culture, a common language. There was a real sense of community. Everybody in the street, in the neighbourhood, knew each other. That vanishes when you import 7.5 million people over such a short period of time. It disappears. The sense of community completely goes away. I'm not even going to start on vetting them, the ages and the genders and the places they come from. I'm just telling you, if you moved 7.5 million Dutch people into a country England size over a 10-year period, you would have massive problems because they would naturally band together and speak their own language and follow their own customs, and the sense of cohesion, of community, of everybody feeling as if they had a connection with each other would totally disappear. It is a terrible idea to have mass migration on that type of scale. 50,000 people a year, I'd be happy with a number like that. Because I've seen it, it worked that way in the 80s. We used to get Indian kids and Pakistani kids moving into my hometown in small numbers, a trickle when I was a lad. And after going to school with me and my mates, after 15 years, you had good, well-adjusted British kids who walked like me, talked like me, unlucky for them. I guess they also sounded like drunk Irish, Scottish, Down syndrome, homeless man, whatever our accent is, I don't even know. They supported the local team. They reject the overbearing cultural norms from their parents, the negatives from some of these poorer countries, the way they treat women, the way they treat gay people. All that stuff went by the wayside when you had a trickle and everybody joined in, pulled together as a community. And when that trickle became a flood, all of that went. All that sense of community has disappeared. You've got turf wars, people bringing the troubles from their own countries, Albanians and Kosovans murdering each other in the streets. It was lunacy from the beginning. It was always going to be lunacy. And you would even have massive problems logistically and culturally, even if every single person you brought was from a wealthy first world country like Norway or Denmark. It was lunacy. It was always going to be lunacy. And it was even more exasperated when we imported some of the worst people imaginable. Convicted murderers moved to the UK. Arnis Zalkans, the murderer of Alice Gross. Lee Rigby's killers. The people that stabbed women in the face on London Bridge. The people that blew up women and children in Manchester, Libya, if anyone's interested, Libya they were from. It's suicide. It is suicide. And as of now, you cannot, in good conscience, if you call yourself a centrist, centre-left, centre-right, reasonable, sensible person who wants to live in a functioning country, vote for any of the mainstream parties. The Conservatives are about as conservative as Jeremy Corbyn's left testicle. Abandon them all. We need a new centre-right alternative that will bring immigration back down to a trickle by any means necessary and aggressively deport anybody who is illegally and especially who has committed illegal acts since they arrived in the United Kingdom. This is not a small problem. It is the single biggest problem assailing Great Britain today. And if we drag that number down by a couple of million, it eases the pressure on everything. Big things like schools, doctors and dentists, and even little things. Road maintenance and power and gas and infrastructure issues. It's the biggest issue of the day. It needs fixing. And I think that big, fat albino jellyfish is the worst of them all. Because at least Tony Ratbag Blair, the real instigator of all of this, At least he called himself the Prime Minister of the Labour Party. To have weasels like David Cameron and Boris Johnson and George Osborne promote this madness for decades knocks me sick. I think I'd rather have the commies in than the current Conservative Party. Anyway, rant over. I'll put the story in the description, have a read, digest it, and let me know what you think in the comments. My God, the world has gone mad. Thanks for watching. See you all very soon. Cheers.